Mother moved in her abusive boyfriend into our house only for him to abuse me, and she did nothing about it. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. All of this happened over 10 years ago. When I was 16, my mother met the devil in the form of a personal trainer. My mom and dad at the time had gotten a divorce. My dad started dating somebody else, and my mom started dating her personal trainer. Now, the extent of her obsession with this man was disgusting. She would do anything to impress him. She would even try to pay for his bills. She got him a bunch of clients for his gym. She would buy him gifts every single week. She was completely and utterly obsessed. From the moment I met him, I knew there was something wrong with him. He would tell my mom that I needed to be disciplined. He also judged the way that I dressed. He would judge my friends, so I started defending myself. I would talk back to him, but this just made him even angrier. Let me just give you some context. I was a straight A student. I was captain of my soccer team, and my mom and I had never had any issues before that. So he kept brainwashing my mom into believing that I was just a bad kid. And for some reason, my mom started agreeing with him. 2 months later, he convinced my mom that he should move in with us. That's when the abuse started. He gave us rules. If I broke them, I had to run for an hour. Part 2 is Mother moved in her abusive boyfriend into our house only for him to abuse me, and she would do nothing about it. Disclaimer, is not my story time. So he made a set of rules. He typed them out, printed them, and put them on the fridge. And if I broke any of these rules, I had to run on the treadmill for an hour. Like I said, my mom and I had never had any issues before him. We were more like best friends, and she believed me. At this point, he had completely brainwashed her into believing that I was just a rebel, and that I needed to be disciplined. One of his rules was that I couldn't eat past 10 p.m. He would lock the fridge so that I couldn't get in. I would come home so late from school because I was in so many clubs and sports. By the time I came home, he would force me to do my homework. After that, I had about half an hour to stuff my face with anything I could find. He even told my mom not to make me dinner because I needed to become self-sufficient. I lost about 10 pounds within a month. I was playing soccer every single day. When I would get to school, I would try to eat as much as I could. One day, I broke the lock on the fridge, and he threw me so hard into a wall, I got a concussion. He told my mom that I did it. Part 3 is my mom's boyfriend would abuse me and she would do nothing about it. Disclaimer, is not my story time. After he threw me into the wall and gave me a concussion, he told my mom that I was the one trying to fight him. That all he did was try to push me off and I hit the wall. My mom believed him. He would find any reason to grab me by the arm and shake me. He would hide my backpack and my shoes so that I would be late to school. And anytime my friends came over, he would bully us. Eventually, it escalated to slapping me every time I talked back. My mom would see it and not do anything. When I complained to her, she would cry but not do anything. I asked her to kick him out and she didn't. She told me that she was afraid of being by herself. I was not going to wait for the next time. I grabbed my backpack and ran to my dad's house. And when I told my dad what was happening, he took me to the police and we made a report. When the police showed up to my mom's house, she came to her senses and realized what was happening. She kicked him out and I didn't speak to her for 3 years. I ended up getting back with him, but then they broke up again. I'm now into real estate and I own several properties. My dad and I see each other every single day. I barely speak to my mom. I recently found out she got back together with him. How do I break them up? Give me ideas.
Storytime about why I will never let my sister pet sit for me ever again. So a little background information, I was 18 and it was the summer before my freshman year in college. And it was towards the end of the summer, so I decided that I wanted to take a vacation with a few of my girlfriends before we all went off to the different colleges that we were going to. And I have a lot of pets. I have 4 hamsters, 2 snakes, a tarantula, 2 birds, and 1 fish. So I asked her if she could watch all of them. She said yeah, so I wrote her out a schedule of when they need to be fed. And I wasn't even going to be gone a week, so it would be pretty easy because I already cleaned all their tanks and everything like that. And I wasn't worried at all because I trusted my sister. She had 2 dogs and a cat, so I thought she was going to be fine. I called her the first 2 days. Everything seemed to be going well. And I called her on the 4th day and she didn't answer the phone. So I called my mom, asked her if she could get a hold of her. And my mom said that she spent the 2 days at her boyfriend's house, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never let my sister pet sit for me ever again. So like I said, I called my mom asking if she could get a hold of her, and she said that she spent the last 2 days at her boyfriend's house. And the worst part was, my sister was the only one with a key to my apartment. So my sister calls me the next day and she's like, hey, sorry, like I was at my boyfriend's house. And I was like, who fed the animals? And she was like, well, I just put enough in their cages so that way they would be fine for like 3 days. And she was like, don't worry, I'll sleep over there tonight to make sure they're okay. So I'm like having a fucking panic attack right now. Anyways, so fast forward, I get home early in the morning and my sister's sleeping on the couch, but my sister brought over her animals too. So I wake my sister up and I'm like, hey, like, how are all the animals? She's like, oh, they're fine. And then we walk into the kitchen and the fucking bird cage is open and my birds are missing and her cats are nowhere to be found. So now I'm freaking the fuck out. So then I go to check on the rest of my animals, like for part 3. Part 3 about why I will never let my sister pet sit for me ever again. So like I said, we walk into the kitchen and the bird cage is open and my birds are nowhere to be found and neither is her cat. So at that point, I run to check on all of my other animals. Thankfully, the snakes were fine, so I go to check on my tarantula and he's missing. So now I grabbed my sister's dogs, locked them in my room, and I went to go check on my hamsters. Yeah, she forgot to feed them the whole week because one of them ate the other one. So at this point, I'm having like a mental fucking breakdown, and I'm moving all the furniture in the living room and everything like that. And we lift up the couch and we see her cat bolt out from under the couch. After that, I look under the couch and my bird is literally torn into pieces under the fucking couch. A few days later, she texted me and she was like, hey, like, I feel so bad. Like, let me buy you a new bird and a new tarantula. And to this day, 2 years later, I still don't know what happened to them.
I faked a pregnancy and got caught. I'm shooketh.
Welcome to The Confessional, a series where you guys send me your confessions through here and I tell them on TikTok so you can get some genuine advice.
My husband and I are more like best friends. To be honest, I don't think he's ever really been attracted to me, and that's what hurts me the most. So you decided to fake a pregnancy. I mean, that makes sense.
You guys, I got Botox and I have angry brows. Can you tell?
Yesterday was my birthday, so happy birthday to me. When my husband and I first met, he chased me for about 6 months. I refused to go out with him because I thought he was too short. Short king.
Just absorbed everything I put on my face right now.
We actually ended up having a mutual friend on Instagram, and he reached out to me and convinced me to go on a date with him. Well, it turns out that he comes from a multi-million-dollar family. His parents own about 12 businesses, and he's set to inherit millions, if not billions. After the first date, we were inseparable. We'll be setting with powder foundation. This is the She Glam one. It's a waterproof. Hell yeah, baby. His parents absolutely loved me from the beginning. His mom even opened up to me one day and told me that she hated every single one of his exes, that they had zero personality, and that I was spunky and funny. Good for you, babe. Look at you winning your mother-in-law over. We got engaged 6 months later, and I felt that his parents were definitely pressuring him, to propose to me. A week after the engagement, his mom took me shopping for wedding dresses. She got me a Vera Wang dress. By the way, my parents were very happy about the engagement. They had never seen me happier before, and obviously marrying into a wealthy family was something that my parents always dreamed of since they didn't have a lot growing up. During the planning of the wedding, I felt him getting further and further away from me. I didn't know why, but I could feel that he didn't want to do it with me anymore. Every time doing the dirty would come up, he had an excuse and never wanted to do it. To begin with, when we were dating, he never really looked for me. That's not a good sign. For example, I was always the one texting him in the morning since I woke up earlier than him, and I was also the one to plan any dates. Suddenly, every single fight was about how he wouldn't help me plan the wedding and how I was always trying to see him instead of him seeing me. In a relationship, a man should chase the woman. That is correct. And if he's not chasing, then he's not interested. I'm gonna do orange mascara. I'm feeling a monochromatic look, you know? I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna show you guys my dress when the whole look is done. I mustered up the courage to ask him if anything was wrong, and he said no, nothing was wrong.
So here's where everything goes down. 2 months after getting married, we were still having the same problem. He wasn't wanting to do it, so I had to come up with a plan. I asked him if he was cheating on me. He said no. I checked his phone, computers, nothing. I even followed him for a week straight. This only led me to one conclusion. He was no longer attracted to me, and it broke my heart. Later on, I found a message between him and his lawyer asking to draw up divorce papers. Coming from a poor background, there was no way I was about to lose everything. At that point, his parents had helped me open up my own business. They bought me a new Mercedes, and they even helped my parents pay off their mortgage. My husband came home from work and I told him that I was pregnant. The look on his face was of horror. He was not happy, but he played it off. What ensued after that was 3 months of pure chaos. I was eating about 4,000 calories a day to gain weight. I've always been a very skinny person and can't gain weight easily. Good for you. I was going to doctor visits once a week and told him to stay outside. He did. I convinced him to keep it a secret between us until we knew that the baby was completely healthy. So we didn't tell our parents. I actually told my parents the truth. And when I told them that I was faking the pregnancy, they told me I needed to stop immediately. My husband ended up telling his parents after the 3 months. My mother-in-law went crazy trying to plan a baby shower. And as you can imagine, them being as rich as they are, she was planning it like it was a wedding. My husband, on the other hand, started having some suspicions. He asked me why my belly wasn't growing as fast. I gaslit him into believing that the women in my family didn't start showing up until 6 months. Instead, he went to the doctor's office and insisted to come inside. I obviously wasn't pregnant, so I had to tell him the truth. He looked at me and said, I knew it. He filed the divorce papers 2 days later. I now live back with my parents. My mother and father-in-law refuse to speak to me. I desperately want to get back with my husband, even though I know he's not attracted to me. Is this crazy, or should I stop? I go to his house every single day and sit outside for hours until he lets me in. He refuses to talk about the marriage and says that we can stay friends. If he does not want you, it's because he doesn't want you. Should she try to convince her husband to get back with her, or what? You guys let her know. Now I'm going to show you the dress. What do you guys think? Bye! I fell in love and married my stepdad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sending me on Instagram. My real father and mother divorced 10 years ago. I was 12 at the time and went through a really bad depression. My mom has always been a little bit toxic. She's always been on top of me about my weight. She even measured my waist, and if I went up an inch or two, she would ground me for a month. Since my dad was not like that, I decided to live with him. My mom remarried shortly after their divorce, and my stepdad turned out to be an angel. He completely understood why I didn't get along with my mom, and he even tried helping my mom get along with me. It worked for a little bit, but then they got divorced. After their divorce, I started hanging out with him at his apartment. I was 19, he was 37. No, I don't think he GROOMED'd me. He was nothing but sweet to me, but I had deep feelings for him. When I came out and told him, he told me that we couldn't see each other. But I kissed him. We kissed each other and then we were inseparable. I even lost my V card to him. I finally told my dad and he accepted the relationship. But when I told my mom, she completely cut me off. And I got married last year. Since I was the one that started everything, I don't think it's wrong of him. I want to get pregnant as soon as possible, but my friends think I should wait. They think I should be with somebody younger. What should I do?
Got pregnant off a first date and lied to my ex and told him it was his baby. Am I wrong for this?
Welcome to the confessional, a series where you guys send me your confessions through here and I tell them here on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube so that you can get some real advice.
My ex broke up with me last year for cheating on him. Very bad start. He caught me making out with the coworker after work. Girl, you sound messy as hell. Of course, I begged him to stay with me, but he was not taking me back. After he broke up with me, I was super happy though. It meant I could finally hook up with guys again. I felt free and I started hoeing out. Okay. The breakup was pretty bad though on my end. Unfortunately, I had just gotten fired from my job and he was the only person helping me pay for my rent. Girl, you cheated on a man that helped you pay for your rent? I started working at a strip club when I was 18 years old and my parents had kicked me out. By the time I met him, I got fired from the strip club for fighting too much with all the other dancers. When I got fired from the strip club, I only had about $200 in my savings. My boyfriend let me live in his apartment rent-free for 6 months. I basically became a stay-at-home girlfriend and I would cook his meals, do his laundry, clean his apartment. He works in tech and makes a lot of money, so for him, this was no issue. The more I tell this story, the more ungrateful I sound. I swear I'm a good person. That's when my ex got me a job at the company that he worked for. Began as an assistant and I was earning really good money. That's when I met a guy at the company. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, that's so funny. Unfortunately, we were very attracted to each other and I couldn't resist. So your poor boyfriend at this point has gotten you a job, let you live in his apartment rent-free for 6 months. Treated you like a queen apparently, so you go and cheat on him, okay? We started hooking up in his car, but really wasn't anything serious. I was planning on doing a whole cut crease. Fast forward to when he caught me cheating, he kicked me out of his house the very same day. I didn't even have a suitcase, so I had to put everything in trash bags. So embarrassing. I ended up sneaking into my own house and sleeping in my old bedroom without my parents noticing. Luckily, my ex did not get me fired from the job and I was able to save some money. After a full week of crying for my ex, I decided to sign up for some dating apps. The first few dates were horrible. The first guy asked me to split a bill, and the second one pressured me into doing it. He so didn't have to, like, at all. 2 months later, my period is super late, but I knew that I had only done it with one of the guys that I had been on a date with in the past 2 months. I went to get a pregnancy test and it came out positive. I immediately called the guy that got me pregnant and he denied everything. By the way, this is the guy that pressured me into doing it. That's when I thought I should just tell my ex that I'm pregnant and make him believe it's his baby. And essentially that's exactly what I did. I called my ex crying and I told him that I needed to see him immediately. His reaction was not at all what I expected. He actually started to cry and said that he would help me out. At this point, he hadn't even asked if the baby was his. He hasn't mentioned a paternity test and he completely blindly believes me. I moved back into his apartment, he gave me a debit card and a credit card, and we're happier than ever. I sometimes feel like an asshole for doing this, but I know that there was no way I could raise that kid on my own. Do you think I'm wrong for this? I think this is a very complicated situation and I completely understand that you are afraid and that you don't want the baby to be without a dad because of course that's horrible. I grew up without a father, but lying to your ex is just on a whole other level. He didn't ask you if the baby was his and he was telling you that he was willing to help you. It sounds to me like maybe the lie wasn't even necessary. Maybe he would have offered to help you anyway. And if you have an update, send it to me. I love you guys. Bye.
Storytime about how I found out that my boyfriend was trying to get with another girl on Valentine's Day. Okay, there's a lot that goes into this story time, so let me break it down for you real quick. I was a sophomore and my boyfriend and I had been dating for about 4 months now. And he was a junior. Well, there was this girl that he was for some reason obsessed with in his Spanish class. She was a freshman, and I know you're probably thinking, oh, well, how did you know he was obsessed with her? Well, he would Snapchat this girl 24/7. Even his friends told me he was obsessed with her. So I talked to him and I told him I was uncomfortable with how much he was talking to this girl. And he said, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'll block her.
Now, I didn't ask him to do that, but it made me feel more confident in how he felt about me. Well, Valentine's Day comes around, and we didn't talk all day until he came to pick me up. I wished him a happy Valentine's Day and got left undelivered. So we get to the restaurants and we decide to put our phones at the end of the table so that way we would be more focused on each other. Well, he goes to the bathroom and then I see this name pop up on his phone. Like for part 2.
Part 2. So, like I said, I saw this name on his phone, and there was something special about this name. So, whenever I kept streaks, I would put the word streak, and then an emoji, and then the person's name. And he got the idea that instead of keeping her name, he would put it as streak. So I was like, that's really fucking weird. And at first I was like, what the fuck? So I opened his phone, and what do you know? It's from that girl. And she was replying back to a big paragraph that he sent her. And we had school that same day. So at 6:30 in the morning, this girl got a big paragraph from my boyfriend about how she's such a beautiful, amazing girl, and that she deserves somebody who's going to take her out and buy her flowers and stuff. And how if she wanted to go out to dinner, let him know. He took an extremely long time in the bathroom, so the waiter came to our table. So I ordered $300 worth of food for myself. So when he came back, I told him that I had to go call my mom, and I left. And he was stuck with a $400 bill. Storytime. Everybody's saying that I cheated on my ex-boyfriend, but I want your guys' opinion. So a little background information. I was a college student, and I had been with this guy who we're going to call Jacob for about 6 months. Towards the end of his and I's relationship, stuff just started to get really boring, and every day I would get the ick from him. Now, at this time also, I had gotten a new job. While I was working, I had met this guy who we're going to call Tim. Since I was a college student, I decided to start working more, so Tim and I would see each other literally every day. Him and I really hit it off, like straight away. Not to mention, him and I had a lot of things in common, his sense of humor was great. Well, the one night before work got out, Tim asked for my number. And I said yes. However, since I was still with Jacob, I decided that I was going to break up with him before I texted Tim. So I broke up with him. Fast forward to now, Tim and I are in a super good relationship. But now everyone's saying that I cheated on Jacob. What do you guys think? Story time about how I got my ex-toxic best friend jumped. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And like any of these toxic best friend story times, she was super jealous of me for literally no reason. She would literally try to be better than me in everything. Like when I did a sport or a club, she would join immediately right after. And it wasn't oh, I'm going to join my best friend. No, it was, I'm going to join so that way I can show her that I'm better than her. For example, in 6th grade, I was captain on the volleyball team, and she decided that she was going to try out her sophomore year. She played it off as if she just wanted to try it out, but then I got announced captain, and she was pissed off when she heard that. She literally blocked me on everything, and she came from a super wealthy family, so she was used to getting whatever she wanted. And my whole friend group would literally tell me, you need to stop being friends with her, she's toxic, she's this, she's that. The only thing that stopped me from being friends with her was the blackmail, like for part 2 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, the only thing that was stopping me from not being her friend was the blackmail that she had. Every time that I pissed her off, or even just randomly, she would be like, oh, I'm going to send this out. I'm going to expose you. She was just overall a shitty friend. So I had an exposing account on Instagram where I would expose people in my class. It got banned, but she DM'd the account the blackmail. Little did she know it was literally me who was running it. Obviously, I didn't post it, but I showed one of my friends, and we kind of made a plan to get rid of the blackmail. So my birthday was coming up, and I was going to Disney, and my mom said that I could invite 2 friends. Originally, I wasn't going to invite Tessa, but since I had this plan, I invited her and one of my other friends. On the 3rd night, my friend and I decided to take our plan into action. Tessa was sleeping, so I went on her phone, and I went and deleted all the pictures, like for part 3. Part 3 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, on the 3rd night, she was sleeping, so we went on her phone. I deleted all of the blackmail that she had on me, and I even went a step further and screenshotted all of the nudes that she was sending back and forth with older guys, and these guys were way older than her, like way older. And I sent them to myself and deleted the text off of her phone. Fast forward, we drop her off at her house. I stay over my friend's house, and we decide that we're going to post everything to my exposing page. And we also came up with a really good idea. Why not send this to Tessa's parents? So we sent them to her parents, And guys, when I tell you this exposing page had so many people on it, it really did. Somebody was like, OMG, like, please send a face reveal, like, I won't tell anybody. So what did I do? I sent a picture of Tessa, and that person posted it to their Snapchat story. Fast forward to the first day of school. We're outside for gym class, and 3 girls beat her ass. Okay, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much because I have literally spent so much time and so much money trying to perfect my skincare routine. I finally think that I have found the holy grail. So a lot of us think that the reason why our skin doesn't look the best is usually because of our face wash or something. That could be the reason, but I have found out that it's most likely your moisturizer. And for my queens that have dry and cracked skin, winter is coming up, so let me put you on. So this is a hyaluronic acid face mask from the brand Wiss. And moisturizing your skin is literally so important because it helps your skin maintain its elasticity. Like, people with naturally oily skin age so much better than people with dry skin because it acts as like a built-in moisturizer. So since I've washed my face, I'm going to put this mask on and leave it on for about 20 minutes. I only use this mask at night because it is super hydrating, and your skin needs more hydration at night than it does during the day. And after 20 minutes, I take it off. Not only does my skin look hydrated, but it feels hydrated. So I highly recommend you guys going and checking this out. The link is in my bio. Is a $40 foundation better than a $9 foundation? The 2 foundations that we have going up against each other are the She Glam Complexion Pro and the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. This at least looks like it's $30. So on this side, I'm going to do the She Glam foundation, and on the other side, I'm going to do the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. First things first, both of these foundations claim to have a matte finish that lasts all day, and it is supposed to feel like nothing is on your face. Also, both of these are supposed to be full coverage, and that's good to put to the test today because I do have a few blemishes. I am in literal shock right now. This is a dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. $9, $40, no beauty filter. They both look and feel the exact same way. Run. Do not walk, run. And everybody can run because there are 30 shades. Like, I'm sorry, you will never catch me spending $40 on a foundation ever again.
My roommate's boyfriend keeps harassing me and I don't know how to tell her. Disclaimer is not my story time on Instagram. My roommate and I have been living together for 2 years now. Now, I wouldn't call her my best friend, but we are very close. We don't really talk about intimate things, but at the end of the night, she's always there and we usually have dinner together. Not really close to my family, so to me, it's important that she's there every single night. But here's where things get really shitty. Her and I both got boyfriends around the same time. I met my boyfriend through a friend and he is the sweetest, purest thing ever. This man cries at every single movie, but he travels a lot for work, so he's usually not there. Now, my roommate's boyfriend, he's a personal trainer and I'm pretty sure he takes steroids because he's always angry. Should I say aggressive? His behavior became super obnoxious to me right away. As soon as he would come over to the apartment, he would start saying things like, babe, your roommate is so hot. Like, he would say that about me to my roommate. Of course, she tried to laugh it off, but I know it bothered her. One day, he even started joking about how he was gonna come into my room one night while I was asleep. Obviously, I did not find this funny. That's when I asked him to leave the apartment. He got so mad, he called me a bitch in front of my roommate and slammed a drawer. Do you think my roommate stood up for me? No. Part 2 is up. My roommate's boyfriend keeps harassing me and I don't know how to tell her. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's not me on Instagram. After he called me a bitch and left the apartment, I was terrified. First off, this guy is 6'2" and he's built like a truck. He's like pure muscle. So when he's yelling in my face and slamming drawers, of course I'm terrified. But my roommate does nothing. But it gets worse. 2 hours after he left, he sends me a text message saying, fuck you. And then he sends me a picture of him with his tongue out, giving me the middle finger. I got up to show it to my roommate, but that's when she actually asked to talk to me. She sat me down on the couch and she started telling me how he's such a good man, and how she's never been able to find anybody like him. Then she asked me if I could just try to get along with him. He even started crying and it broke my heart. So I decided to let it go. But the next time this guy came over, once again he started playing super loud music. I came out of my bedroom because I was trying to work, and I asked him nicely to turn it down. At this point, my roommate was showering, so it was just him and me in the living room. But then he gets up from the couch and walks slowly towards me, looking me up and down. That's when he says, you wish you had a guy like me. I turned around and tried to walk back to my room, but he grabbed my arm and turned me around. Then he grabbed my face and tried to kiss me. I actually gagged. That's when he said to me that I was just playing and that I actually want him. The whole time he was squeezing my arm so hard, I finally got away and went into my bedroom. And that's when he sent me a picture of his thing. I literally almost died. I walked out and kicked him out again. This time he didn't put up a fuss, but now I don't know how to tell my roommate. What the heck am I gonna do? Found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. I met my boyfriend at the gym. Yeah, I know. Terrible idea. You can say it was lust at first sight. From the moment we saw each other at the gym, we couldn't take our eyes off each other. He came straight up to me at the gym and told me that he really liked me. But I was super shy. He was just some random guy I was meeting at the gym. But he was all about me. He asked me for my number and I said no. He asked me for my Instagram and I said no. For the next 2 weeks, he would come into the gym at exactly the same time I did. I would basically go work out whenever I had my lunch break. So of course, he would show up then. Of course, slowly but surely, he would charm me. He would even bring me lunch. After about 2 weeks, I finally gave him my phone number. That's when he asked me to go have breakfast, which I thought was weird. Should have been the first red flag, right? This was his excuse. He said he worked nights, but that his schedule would change all the time. So this meant that he would sometimes work during the day or at night. It was just random. So we went to breakfast. Here's the second red flag. He asked me if we could have breakfast 40 minutes away from where we lived. We both lived near the gym. Of course, I thought this was strange, but I said sure. He picked me up, and the whole time at breakfast, he kept looking at his phone. Part 2 is up. Just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. For our first date, we went to have breakfast 40 minutes away from where we both lived. Again, this was another red flag I ignored. During the breakfast, he was on his phone the entire time, and I called him out on it. I asked him why he invited me to breakfast if he was going to be on his phone all day. That's when he made up this whole sob story about how hard his work life was, how he was always stuck to his phone answering emails and text messages from his boss. And of course I believed it. I mean, I didn't know this guy from anything. After that, he put his phone down, and I realized he was the most amazing man I had ever met. A man that can make me laugh is really important to me. And we laughed the entire time. We were telling each other jokes. We talked about family and values. We talked about our favorite foods, countries we wanted to go to, places we had been to. It was the perfect date. We even loved the same type of music, and our favorite movie was the same. So as you can imagine, I completely fell head over heels for this man. But the red flags continued. A week after our first date, he asked me to be his girlfriend. Did I say yes? Of course I did. But this was just another red flag. He began love bombing me and always wanted to be with me. But he never invited me over to his place. Part 3 is up. I just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, is now my story time. I sent me on Instagram. Every time I'd ask to go over to his place, he would say no. First off, he told me that he had a terrible roommate, that his roommate was noisy and really dirty and the apartment stank. So for that reason, he didn't want me to come over. And of course I said, yeah, that's fine. Here's the 4th red flag that I ignored. He would ask to come over to my apartment at odd hours. Sometimes he wanted to come over at 3 in the morning. Sometimes he wanted to come over super early. And other times he wanted to come over really late. Because I have a 9 to 5 job, I kept saying no. I needed to get my beauty sleep, please. But even if I said no, he would still come over. Here's the 5th red flag. He would come over to my apartment and instantly fall asleep on the couch. I was always asking him why he was so tired, and he would just say that it was too much work. Well, we've been dating now for 2 months. A few days ago, I started getting suspicious of the situation, so I showed up to his apartment, but he didn't live there. It was an office building. I asked him to come over and I confronted him. That's when he confessed that he is married, and that he's been married for 10 years. But he says that his wife is a nightmare and that he wants to divorce her. What should I do?
Story time about my worst trip off LSD. So one of the kids in my friend group was about to leave for Arizona, and we would always talk about how we need to trip together before he leaves. And anytime that I would trip off acid, I would go to my one plug. Well, he ran out, so we had to go to somebody else. And I've never tried this kid's stuff before, but I just said fuck it, YOLO, which should not have been my motto at the time. But it was. So that night, we're in the car, and one of our friends is driving because he's sober, obviously. And before I put the tab on my tongue, I started to get really nervous. And I have never felt like that before I've taken acid. But I kind of just said fuck it, and I put it on my tongue. So we go pick up 2 more people that I'm not really close with. So then we make our way over to our other friend's apartment. And I'm kind of feeling it, but not really. But then as soon as we walk into that apartment, I start tripping balls. And you know, everything was going good. But then my dumb ass decided to look in the fucking mirror. And as soon as I look in the mirror, I see myself smile back at me, like for part 2. Okay, part 2. So like I said, I look in the mirror and I see myself smiling back at me. And that's whenever everything went south so quick. I sat on the bed, tried to pull myself together because I didn't want to make a fucking scene in front of everybody. But then I got caught in this fucking loop. And if you don't know what the loop is, then I'm going to tell you what it is. It's basically where you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then I started looking around at everybody and it looked like their faces were melting. One of my friends got up off his chair, walked to the other side of the room, and I watched him do that. But when I looked back over at the fucking chair, he was still sitting there. So I looked at my one friend that was sober, who I was actually really close with, and I think he saw the look in my eye and he was like, "Do you want to leave now?" And I just shook my head, yeah, like I could not deal with that shit anymore. So we go to his car and then we drive to my boyfriend's house. Because I could not go home. I would have got crucified. Well, we get in the house and as soon as his mom sees me, she knows that something's wrong. Like for part 3.
Okay, part 3. So like I said, I walked in and she knew that something was wrong with me right away. Because she was like, "Oh, I have a letter from your boyfriend." And usually I would run up, grab it, read it really quickly because I would only get like 1 letter a week. But instead I ran downstairs because her face was fucking melting. So 5 minutes later, she has to come downstairs and help me get dressed into my pajamas because I forgot how to dress myself. I didn't want to be left alone that night, so my friend stayed in the basement with me. So he went and tried to go to sleep, but he couldn't because I was watching Butterfly Effect for 8 hours straight. Like, that was the only thing that could calm me down. But I still don't even know all the freaking words to it, which is weird. Like, he would try to change the video and somehow I end up back to Butterfly Effect. And then he tried to kiss me. So he left the next morning because he had to go to work, which was at like 11 a.m. And I took this tab at 8 p.m. the day before. So I was getting texts like, where are you? You're supposed to be home now. So I had to go home and act normal in front of everybody while I'm still tripping balls. And I also got grounded for coming home late because I could not come home at the right time because I was tripping so hard. And this lasted for about 24 hours. Crazy story time about how my mom kidnapped my sister. So my mom and dad split whenever I was really young. And at this time, they were always in and out of court battling for custody over my sister and I. Well, the one day my dad drives my mom downtown to the courthouse because she didn't have a ride. And before she gets out of the car, she's like, can I give the girls a hug? And my dad was like, yeah, go ahead. Little background information. I was more of a daddy's girl. My sister was more of a mommy's girl, which is probably the reason why she took her. I was sitting by the window, my sister was sitting in the middle seat. So she gives me a hug. Next thing I know, my sister's seatbelt was unbuckled and my mom was running across the street with her in the middle of downtown. Didn't even look for cars. So my dad got out of the car, ran over, grabbed her, picked both of them up and walked over to the sidewalk, and my mom was screaming bloody murder. So this guy called the cops and my dad was trying to show them custody papers because he had full custody. But the cop knew my mom, so he let her take my sister. We got her back, but I didn't see this bitch for like 4 months. Toxic best friend story time. So I had an off and on friendship with this one girl. In my freshman year, we became friends again. And she had this boyfriend named Nicholas. And they literally fought 24/7. And every time she would fight, she would be like, can you please fix this for me? So she would have me add him on Snapchat, fix it, and then block him. And guys, this literally was happening like 5 times a week. And then after she asked me to do that the first few times, I realized she started going through my phone. And when I say my phone, I mean my whole motherfucking phone. A bitch was going through my Snapchats, DMs, text messages, and I didn't know how to confront her because that's just weird. So the one day I was getting ready at her house because we were about to go out, and she was like, I'm grounded, can I use your phone real quick? And I was like, yeah, just let me Snapchat this last person back. And she goes, no, and rips the phone out of my hand. And she starts going through my Snapchat right in front of me. And I had a streak with this kid named Nick. She goes up to me and says, what the fuck is this? Like for part 2.